Hi, I'm Kellen Mace from the Developer Relations team at WP Engine. I'm thrilled to be with you today presenting for Gatsby Conf 2022. In this talk, we're going to learn how we can supercharge our WordPress-powered Gatsby sites using a new plugin called Atlas Content Modeler. As you may know, using Gatsby with WordPress is a very popular pairing. Many people are successfully using WordPress as a headless CMS and then using the Gatsby source WordPress plugin to pull the data out of WordPress and use it to render the pages of their Gatsby site. WordPress out of the box has support for two post types or content types. Those are post and page. So it's very common to use post for your blog posts, and then page for your static pages, like an about page, for instance, would be good for that. What happens though when you need to register custom data? If beyond post and page, you need some other custom content type like a project or team member or something like that. How would you go about doing that? There are three ways that I'm aware of at this point to do that, and they're listed here. The first one would be to manually write the custom PHP code to make that happen. So if you're skilled in that area, you could write the PHP and tie into WordPress's APIs to register a custom post type and some taxonomies for it and custom fields for it and so on. That's certainly possible, but in my experience, it can be very time consuming to do it that way. Option 2 on the list would be to cobble together several other plugins. So one thing you'll see commonly in the headless WordPress space is for somebody to use a plugin like custom post type UI to register a custom post type and taxonomy, and then maybe another plugin like advanced custom fields to register their custom fields. And if they need efficient relationships, between posts, they might need to reach for something else like MB relationships or posts to posts. So a collection of plugins, and then you're not even done at that point. From there, you need to expose all that data in the GraphQL schema, so you're able to query for all of it. So that typically leads people to install some WP GraphQL extension plugins that expose all that data so that it's available in your Gatsby site. Right? So you can probably tell from me describing all of that, there are lots of moving pieces, and it ends up being quite a collection of plugins to store all that custom data that you need and also expose it to your Gatsby front end. So the easiest option on the list then is number 3. This one is Atlas Content Modeler. So this is what we're going to dig into in this talk, and we'll see how it's way easier, in my opinion, than options 1 and 2. So I think you're really going to like it. Atlas Content Modeler is a free open source plugin, and it's available on the WordPress.org plugin repository. So after this talk is done, if you want to try it out for yourself, you can certainly go straight to this page, install and activate the plugin, and start going to town using ACM. It has support for all of this stuff. So you can register custom post types with it or custom content types. You can register taxonomies. So if you want, ways of grouping together groups of posts, it has support for that as well. It can do custom fields. So if this would be similar to advanced custom fields, if you're familiar with that. It has support for repeater fields, and also it has support for efficient relationships. And maybe the most impressive thing beyond all of this is it adds all of this data is automatically added to both the WordPress REST API and to the WP GraphQL schema. So with one single plugin, you're able to model out, and create all of this data for your data models or your content models. And not only that, it's automatically exposed via GraphQL, and you can use it immediately in your Gatsby site, which is really exciting to me. So to demonstrate ACM and the magic that it can do for us, we're going to build this site here, Synthwave Select. So this is a site where we're going to have songs from the synthwave subgenre of the electronic music genre, and we're going to display a curated list of synthwave tracks on the page. So the designer we're working with gave us some mock-ups that look something like this. So this is the home page here. We're going to have the header section, a couple links, and then below that, we'll have a list of cards representing each of these curated synthwave songs that we're featuring on the site. So from here, let's think about what each of these sections of this site need to look like and the data that they might need. So first, we'll have each one of these cards. We're calling that a song card. If we just take the designs that we were given from our designer and think about what data we would need to drive this, it might look something like this. So we might need an image for that song. We would need a title for that song, as well as an artist name. All right, so we could jot that down, that we would need some way of storing that data for each song. Next, we can look at the mockup that we have for a single song page. So that would look something like this. If we try to break this down into the component, pieces of data that we would need to build this, it might look something like this. So again, we have the song's title, but in addition, we have the album name, artist name, and also a YouTube video ID. So this is the ID for a YouTube video that we're going to use to embed a YouTube video for that song on the page as well. All right, so now that we have some idea of all of the data that we would need to be able to store in WordPress to build out these pages, then we can think about what content models we would need to register in Atlas Content Modeler. And I'll walk you through exactly how to do that next. So our content modelers, I think, can look something like this. So we would have one model called an artist, and then that artist could be related to other models for songs, right? And you can see here that we have a one-to-many relationship where one artist can be associated with many songs. So next, let's break down what fields we would need for these two content models. For our artists for this site, we'll store the name of that artist and then the songs that are associated with this artist. Now on the other side, for our song content model, for that one we would need the song's title, album image, YouTube video ID, and then the artist that's associated with this song. And you might have noticed that the very bottom one on both of these lists, that is where our relationship comes in. Next, let's dive in and see how we can create these custom content models that our site needs using Atlas Content Modeler. You can see here that I'm running a local WordPress site and I have 3 plugins installed: WP GraphQL, WP Gatsby, and Atlas Content Modeler. So with that, I'm able to head over to in the sidebar to Content Modeler and then Models. And here we'll click the Get Started button to create our first content model. So we said we would need one for artist. So we'll type that in, and then we'll give it a plural name of artists. The model ID that gets auto-generated is artist, and that's how it'll show up in GraphQL for us. So that looks good to me. API visibility, we'll go ahead and set this one to public so that we can query this data from our front-end Gatsby site. We can give this a model icon, so like a business person might be nice for that. And then I'll click create. And here we are. The artist's model has been created now. So I can give it any fields that it needs. So I'll head over here to text, and we said in our planning stage that our artists would need a name field. So I'll type name right there, and I'll just stick with the auto-generated API identifier. We'll use this as like the post title in WordPress. That makes sense since it's an artist's name, and it'll just be a single line text. So I'll go ahead and click create. All right, and with that, you can see that we've created our first content model and assigned a text field to it to capture the name of this artist. From here, for your models, you would be able to click the plus button and add as many fields that you may need. Now I'll head back to the main models page, and we'll speed things up as we create our song model. And with that, we're done registering the custom fields for our song content model. So at this point, we have both our artists and songs content models all set. I've gone ahead and created some dummy data here. So your site users, they would be able to go to artists now in the sidebar and click through to either create or edit an artist, give that artist a name and connect songs to it. Otherwise, they could go to songs here in the sidebar and register a song. And you see the fields that are reflected here are the exact same ones that we had set up for that content model. So we have title, album, album image, the YouTube video ID, and then the connected artists as well here. All right, so with that data, we can see how we can query for that in our Gatsby app now. So one really cool thing is if you want just a quick query, what you can do in the Atlas Content Modeler models page is you can click the 3 dots on the side and go to Open in GraphQL. So if you do that, it'll create a GraphQL query for us right here. And then all you have to do is click the play icon to execute this query to see what data your Gatsby site would get back. So this is super helpful for seeing, how the data is going to be added to your GraphQL schema. Likewise, you can also use Gatsby's graphical that it has. So for my local Gatsby site, which I have running right here, if I go to the GraphQL endpoint where I can test out my queries, I can use the Explorer to build these queries. And you can see here that like the WP all song right here has been added to the schema for all of my songs data. So from there, I can go to the nodes, for instance, for all of my songs. I can say for each song, give me back just the song title and the album. How about? So if I fire off that query, there it is. You can see that my custom content type for songs, this is what my Gatsby app will return if I fire off this exact query. So this is super powerful. Not only have we been able to quickly build out our content models, but all of that data is available in the GraphQL schema automatically. So once you've composed a query that looks like it's returning what you want here, what you can do is highlight this, and then over in your Gatsby project code base, you can run that as a GraphQL query. So I'll just go to my home page right here, which is where I have each of the cards for each of the songs, and you can see what that query looks like. So I take my query that I've composed, and I could call Gatsby's use static query hook, and then paste in whatever query I'd like to run right here. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm calling all WP song and saying for each of the nodes, give me this stuff back. URI, song title, album image, all of those things. When that query is done, I'm just pulling out the songs data from it, and I'm rendering a React component called song card list and passing that through. And that component is responsible for rendering my list of cards here. Let's look at one other example of how the single song pages are built. So I'll click through to a single song page that looks like this. And on the Gatsby site, I'll show you what that looks like. So inside of my Gatsby node file, I am calling exports.createPages, and I have this async function here that fires off this GraphQL query. So again, you could take this exact thing right here and compose that right here in Gatsby's graphical instance and fire that off to see what you get back and ensure that you have the data that you need. Once you do, you can go ahead and fire off that query, and then down below use Gatsby's create page function to go ahead and pass that song data through for each of these songs and give it a template to use. So in my project, that's this song.js file is the template. So I'm just taking the song that was passed in as props and doing some destructuring here, and then just rendering out all of the data. So I have the song title that appears at the top there. I have album name, artist name, and then I'm doing the YouTube embed as well. So with that, we'll wrap things up. I hope this talk has given you a really good sense of how powerful Atlas Content Modeler can be for quickly creating custom content models and then being able to query for that data and use it in your Gatsby sites. If this is interesting to you and you want to check it out, be sure to download the plugin from the WordPress.org plugin repository and try it out today. If you're interested in headless WordPress generally, my team and I produce a lot of content at developers.wpengine.com. So be sure to check out our site as well for all things headless WordPress. Thank you so much for watching.
Ready for the live Q&A? Let's go.